So now we're going to try and focus on this elbow area, which could be tricky sometimes since we have some geo right here that's blocking our view. So I'm just going to try and select these ring of verts that's around the lower bicep area. I'm going to go ahead and give that full influence to the upper arm. So I'm going to go ahead and select all these verts and assign them to upper arm, just to get that out of the way. So right now I'm just going and grabbing the verts and assign them full influence to the bones I know that would be the most dominant bone that would be influenced these verts. And then make sure I don't have any stray verts that have very little influence. So I know this metal or leather strap right here will be full influence on the upper arm. So I'm going to go ahead and assign that full influence, get that out of the way. Fortunately, the loop tool does not select all these verts. I'm going to go in and select these individually. So now I'm going to start doing my blends. So I can already see that I'm getting some stretching right here with this edge. So I'm going to try and select these verts and add some influence to the upper arm so I can pull those in closer to these string of verts. Right now I'm just changing my influence to some of these verts that have that nice curve of edges here. Same thing right here. Looking at my texture. Probably pull these up a little bit closer to the upper arm. A good indication is use the colors of your verts. You know, as you can see, we have a nice orange and the red. Everything's showing influence, where this one is showing no influence because it has no color to it. If anything, you can start adding the influence to get that color the same to this one. So right now I need to focus on the fold where the elbow meets right here with upper arm and forearm. It's kind of difficult to see. But I already know that there will be influence on the upper arm and forearm. Since most of the influence will be on the forearm, you just need a little bit on the upper arm. So I like to use a 4-6 equation that I always like using just to start it off. I would use the same conversion with this vert, but since it's closer to the forearm, there'll obviously be more influence to the upper arm instead of the forearm. So I'm just going to do a half and half. And I'm going to use a 6-4 on this vert since it's closer to the forearm, upper arm. So now I'm going to try and focus on this clavicle area, mostly with the upper arm and the spine. So usually what I like to do starting off when I rig this general area is that I'll only use 2 bones, the upper arm and this rib cage bone. Keeps things simple and quick at first. And then what I'll do then is I'll start grabbing my collarbone and then start adding the influence with these verts to the collarbone. Usually I don't even use the collarbone on most game models because it just reduces the bone count and the influence for partitions. But I'm really looking for some really nice detail, so I'm gonna add that collarbone in. So I'm gonna be really quick about this and start using my 4-6 conversion. Actually, I'm gonna go ahead and select my clavicle and select all these verts and just zero that out so I know the clavicle is not influencing any verts whatsoever. So at this point, I'm just trying to select the verts that are running along the same edge and then add my influence based off of that. One good tip is that when you're rigging, since I said earlier I only want 2 bones influence these verts for right now, to just look in your weight tool, make sure there's only 2 bones that are influencing it. So right now I can see that my spine bone is the only thing influence these verts. Try and keep in mind that we have 0.3 influence on the upper arm for this vert, and we have 0.1 for the upper arm on this vert. It only makes sense to make this 0.2. Which that could change later on depending when we start messing with the envelopes a little more. Sometimes this part could be tricky, but using my 6-4 conversion or equation makes it a little bit simpler. So I'm just going to grab these verts that are basically the armpit. So right now I'm looking at my edges again and trying to manipulate my weight influence so that these edges flow the way the mesh would flow normally. Basically, I have to avoid things like this where it dips into the mesh, whereas we want the edge to flow a little more. So I'm gonna add some more. Again, add influence to the spawn here. So I'm gonna start adding influence from my chest here. So you can basically simulate this muscle that runs up the chest and through the deltoid here. So at this point, I'm not really too worried about what my numbers are. I'm just trying to make it look pretty. But I do know that I want only 2 bones influencing these verts, which is my rib cage and the upper arm. So since these are the outside verts, the furthest from the upper arm, I'm just going to add a 0.1 influence. Just to show that little bit of pull, but nothing dramatic. I'm just trying to fix this vert to try and get those edges to flow really nice. I can already see I have the verts right here and I don't like the edge being too sharp the way it is. So right now I'm trying to work on my deltoid here. I'm gonna try and skin it up to where it gives that nice deltoid shape of a softball instead of being all deformed. Right now I'm just being really rough about it, just adding influence till I get these edges to look like the shape I want it to be. So now that I have my softball shaped deltoid, start cleaning up. So right now I'm just looking at my verts and seeing what verts either pull too much or pull too little. Basically just comparing them to these row of verts. So right now I'm looking at my edges once again to see how they best flow with a mesh. So I'm basically looking at this edge right here and make sure that's nice and smooth. So this is another perfect example of what looks good in one pose but may not look good in another pose. I think I'm gonna go with this type of pose right here where the arms bend back more or less. So I'm really just trying to focus on this fold right here to simulate that portion of the skin that usually folds up. So right now I'm gonna start focusing on the neck area. Right now I'm just trying to grab these rings of verts that are around the neck. So I'm gonna go ahead and assign full influence to the spine. And then I'll start adding influence from the neck bone. I'll go ahead and select the head. Add full influence to the head. So at this point, I'll be blending between three different bones: the neck bone, the head bone, and the spine. Gonna be mostly the head that's driving these vertices. So I can see just by looking through my animation that I need some more influence on these ring of verts, just to give that feel of it being skin and pulling. But I'm just gonna add very little bit, and I may not add that much on these verts. So right now what I'm trying to do is there's a muscle or a tendon that runs alongside the neck into the chest. So you basically want to get that to pull with the head really good. So it looks like a muscle basically. Same idea with the Adam's apple area. I'm gonna try and make this as smooth and clean as possible with the transition between the head and neck when he turns his head. So right now I'm checking my silhouette once again. At this point I know his head would never rotate that much, but I like to take it to the extreme and try to rig with that extreme just in case. Right now I'm just checking my verts to make sure there's no pinching or any weird pulls that I don't like. Like right here, for example. I want to try and keep the line going like this. And now I can see this vert's pretty much dragging behind when he rotates his head, so. So right now we'll start adding my collarbone into the mix. So I'm basically gonna start grabbing the lines of verts like I was earlier. The influence from the collarbone is gonna be really small. I probably won't go above 0.5, if that. So I'm basically just trying to use the collarbone to help shape my deltoid. Definitely want to try and skin it to where you can see the collarbone lift up like you would on a normal person. Sometimes I see verts in an area I'm not even working in. I just can't resist to fix it. Right now I'm just trying to give a little influence to these trap muscles to the collarbone, so we can see them pulling a little bit as he lifts up his shoulders. So I'm looking at my silhouette here, where my neck meets the base of the head. And I can see that it's bending too much in this point, where I want to try and get it to bend more closer to the base of the head. So I'm gonna add some influence to the neck here. So I'm basically just trying to get that more realistic pinch that you would normally get when you rotate your head up like that. Now I need to check his head rotation, make sure that looks good, like that. which I already see some conflicts here. So right now I need to try and find a good balance between those two poses.